I'm building an Imperator Titan, a 7-foot tall Warhammer model that stands over 100 meters tall at Warhammer scale. It's a colossal project, and hundreds of hours of work have already been done. In previous videos, I built the frame, blocked in the giant legs, built the hips and torso, and just recently I scratch built a terrifying head for this monstrous machine. But in this video, we're going to work on the part that gives the Titan its iconic silhouette, the massive cathedral-like fortress on the Titan's back. In previous videos, I blocked in the structures on the Titan's back with a simple set of geometric shapes, just to get a sense for what it would look like. But the final structure needs to be much more elaborate, obviously. Now, one of the things I've always wanted to do with this Titan is to play some games on it, whether it's Necromunda, Kill Team, or some other game with a mixed community-driven rule set like Inquisitor 28. But a big goal of mine has been to make the Titan into a playable game board. Now, until this point, I've been using the epic scale Imperator Titan as a rough guide for this project, but the detail really starts to fall short when it comes to the upper cathedral. Not only does it lack in detail, but I think it lacks some of the gothic character that modern 40k structures seem to have in spades. It also seems to have a shortage of space. In my mind, the buildings on the top need to have considerably more volume to be able to hold all the things that are supposed to be going on inside. Now, in designing the top of my Titan, I wanted to find the right balance between the feeling of a gothic cathedral with something that feels solid and strong enough to be a fortress that would go into battle. I started by constructing the large corner towers that dominate the front of the front portion of the upper structure, opting for a solid-looking hexagonal construction. I used pieces of foam cut on the angle attachment of my hot wire cutter and added a solid structural column piece on each corner. I added a heavy reinforced appearance with a thinner piece of angled foam, turning each of these corner columns into a reinforced buttress. I used a similar method for the central structure, which I think helps to develop the style of the piece as a whole into a unified building. I did 2 layers, one smaller than the other to go on top, and I used a large semicircle of foam to make the domed ceiling. The upper platform of the Titan itself needs to be able to stand on its own on a table, and it also needs to be able to slot into a specific place when I put it on the torso. So I put some blocks of foam in place to correspond with the torso buttresses, and some on the back as well, which allows me to place the whole thing slightly elevated on my work table. I made these little corner turrets out of some chunks of foam cut into an octagonal shape, and then glued them onto the structure. One of my favorite illustrations of the Imperator Titan is this one here, which shows Space Marines running around on the upper platform. I definitely wanted this platform area to feel like somewhere where people would walk around, so I added a 1/2-inch thick railing around the perimeter of the Titan, linking it up with the corner turrets. I placed my towers on the upper structure, and once I had the placement correct, I glued down some blocks of foam on the interior, rather than gluing the towers themselves down. This will allow me to remove these pieces as I work on them, allowing them to slot back into the correct place and remain stable. Around the side here, I wanted to build a raised area, an upper courtyard on each side that would give the building some more size and solidity, and also provide for some more interesting gameplay when I started moving models around this thing. Sometimes, if you keep a sharp eye out, you'll find a piece of scrap in the garbage that's very useful. Check this out. See this Foamcore offcut? It fits perfectly around the side of the building here. What are the chances of that? Very slim, I think. Cool. One of the downsides of the way that I've always crafted is that it's improvisational. This is a great method for crafting buildings out of scraps and bits, allowing you to visualize and adjust things on the fly. But for a precise structure like this, my improvisational style causes a lot of problems. The clear best way to build a precise structure is to make a detailed plan, double check it, and then execute the plan. If you choose to build improvisationally, as I have, you run into a few issues. The first is compounding errors. Small issues with the way things fit become larger and larger problems the more you build upon them. But moreover, you can get bogged down in analysis paralysis, when every next step requires not just the work involved in crafting it, but requires you to make a stylistic decision that will affect the piece as a whole. It tends to slow down the process immensely. So I had to go back and add windows to the towers, and to do this I had to pull apart the towers I had made previously and then slice up the walls into segments using my hot wire foam cutter. I cut some Gothic arches into some medium chipboard, making some jigs to guide the hot wire cutter. Then I used these to cut Gothic arches into the walls. Because this detail repeats across many surfaces, it took a long while to cut all the pieces. I reassembled them with glue, bringing my wall structures back together. I spent a lot of time agonizing over the right amount of detail to put on these surfaces. A real Gothic cathedral is completely encrusted with carved stone elements, but those also take hundreds of workers, decades, sometimes even centuries to complete, and they weren't designed to deflect anything in a combat situation either. I ended up coming up with the following design, which I think looks pretty good. So using my fledgling 3D modeling skills, I made some window frames that would fit in my building. It's important to me that the structure is largely scratch built, but for details like windows, there's simply no practical solution better than 3D printing. With the windows printed, I was able to set them into the window frames with a few dabs of superglue. With those in place, I reassembled the towers. I added some additional detail with thin slices of foam, making a larger Gothic arch to give depth to the arch and breaking up the plainness of the structure even more. I added some crenellation-like details to the wall by the middle windows as well, adding even more geometry and texture. The roofs are another thing that I struggled with for a long while. I crafted the hexagonal pyramid roofs from the front towers out of pink foam, and then cut a large square frame bit to act as a housing for the massive guns that will stick out in future steps. I added an interior Gothic arch to these boxes for the guns to emerge from, which I think will look pretty cool. And I wanted the roofs to have some Gothic detail of their own, so I began to look at the Gothic detailing on real-life cathedrals. Cathedrals have a detail called crockets, named after a shepherd's crook that project from the corners of the roof lines and add a distinctive Gothic appearance. I thought it'd be cool to make some special crockets where each nub on the crocket looked like the head of an imperial eagle. This is a small detail that'll make the roofs look really special. I designed and printed some of these crockets, modeling them into long strips. I'm actually really proud of these, I'm not gonna lie. The tiling on the roofs was another challenge. The sheer volume of roof space and the polished look I wanted made tiling them a challenge on itself. I decided I wanted overlapping rows of regular looking sheeting, and set about measuring this on some cereal box, which is how I normally make roofs. So I did a bit of quick math as I was sketching out these shapes to cut out of cardboard, and I realized I would need to cut 40 triangles, which is something like 15 sheets, which is I would need 5 cereal boxes, and it just ended up, the thought of doing that was just making my hand cramp up just thinking about it, so I knew I needed to find another solution. So I ended up calling my friend Spencer, who runs Loading Dock Productions, which is a fabrication company that specializes in miniatures. Spencer threw my designs on his laser cutter, and in no time at all I had the pieces I needed cut into 1mm plastic card. I'm really happy about this solution because plastic card is also more durable than cardboard, and the laser cutter gives such a crisp and regular appearance, which will really benefit the overall neatness of the project. With a bit of hot glue, I glued these strips into place. I also designed and printed a pointy tip for these towers, inspired by the old Epic model, then applied my Imperial Eagle Crocket pieces. I'm really stoked with how these pieces look all together. The roofs could have been boring, but are now some of my favorite bits of the whole model. For other less prominent roof segments, I glue slices of 1mm thick foam onto some cereal box and then cut that into the shape I need. Here, for example, I'm making some cool areas of roof to cover these walkways to the front towers. I think that'll look pretty good. Let's put it on there and see. Hell yeah, that does look pretty cool. Underneath that, I cut some Gothic arches in and was originally planning on doing some doors here, but the more I think about it, the more I think these should be niches for statues. What do you guys think? This whole front area needs a focus, so I added a gate-like Gothic arch. Now here's a great example of my analysis paralysis at work. On the Epic model, right here is a massive cannon, and that was originally my plan, but I think it might look better up here, or even up here, sticking out of the dome like a planetarium telescope type deal. If I move the door upwards, I can, for example, put some stairs and a cool gate here, and that looks pretty cool. And you can see what I'm getting at. I'm getting bogged down in all these small decisions. Up to this point, with the exception of the head, I haven't added any bits or greebles to this entire project. And that's been intentional. I want to get the fundamental shapes and layout locked in before doing that. But with these elements in place, the time is now. I've been collecting interesting toys, models, bits, and all sorts of other gubbins to deck this thing out with mechanical details for years now, to really make it look like the walking machine that it should be. So as you can see, I've made a lot of good progress on the Cathedral part of the Titan, but I'm going to stop this video here, and there's a reason for that. I decided to push a bunch of the work that I've done already to another video because some of the things aren't completely polished and ready for me to show you yet. Things like some mold making experiments I've been doing to add some extra detail, or some of the 3D files that I'm still ironing out some things with because they're printing weird and stuff like that. And there's also some structures on the back that you might find interesting, as well as little updates I've made to the rest of the Titan. I made the decision to just push those to the next video, so I'm already halfway done the next video, and I can update you guys more often. It's a win-win. So yeah, I hope you guys are really enjoying how this is coming along so far. I'm definitely stoked with how it's looking. Just a reminder that this is the scale of a Space Marine on this thing. My goodness. I mean, I think 6'2" tall, which I don't know what that is in centimeters. You Euros are gonna have to use Google for that one, but like, it's scraping the ceiling. This thing is an absolute beast, and damn, I'm stoked, guys. Huge thank you to all of my patrons for your continued support, and to the Army Painter for making this happen. And yeah, if you guys want to join my Patreon, there's a link in the description below, and you'll get your name on the finished Titan when that happens. So yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll see you next time on Eric's Hobby Workshop.